I make this look good.
What's good, people? It's CJ Williams, and today we're kicking off our countdown to the release of Will Smith's latest film, Bad Boys Ride or Die. This video will be ranking his 90s output, but trust and believe the rest is on the way. If you're new to the game, we'll give you a quick rundown. We're ranking the films themselves, not his performances in them, unless it's too close to call. Also, we do not do participation trophies, so where the day takes you is gonna be on the sidelines for this one. If you want to keep seeing the channel grow, don't forget to hit that like button and to subscribe. You're with family now. Let's get to it. Number 7, Wild Wild West. A remake of the popular 60s show of the same name, Smith chose this film over starring as the lead character Neo in The Matrix. Need I say more? While that choice aged worse than the Pistons draft selection in 2003, it's really not even the worst part of the film. While the script, acting, special effects, and casting were all subpar as well, even they don't paint the full picture. You see, Smith and director Barry Sonnenfeld enjoyed massive success with Men in Black. So much success, they thought, why not run it back? Except instead of Tommy Lee Jones and Aliens, they thought audiences were clamoring for a sci-fi western. Two genres that couldn't be more diametrically opposed. Not to mention an absorbent budget that would fund a modern Marvel movie. With estimates ranging from $170 to $240 million, that puts them anywhere between $300 and $420 million when adjusted for today's inflation. The optimist in me can at least appreciate appearances from Salma Hayek and Garcelle Bouvet. The realist in me found the best part of the film came when the screen cut to black. Can you believe that between Wild Wild West and The Matrix, one film had a budget of almost $250 million and the other is regarded as one of the greatest films of all time? That's crazy work. Number 6, Made in America. You remember that euphoric feeling of first getting your learner's permit? An enhanced perception of freedom and responsibility, like adulthood was just around the corner? That was Will in Made in America. Although he enjoyed much more screen time than his actual debut Where the Day Takes You, he was still more or less relegated to a comic relief role. Starring Ted Danson and Whoopi Goldberg as two culturally shocked lovers, everything about the film screams interracial fever dream. If you saw the film and thought to yourself, man, these two have surprising chemistry, you weren't the only one. The two would spark a tumultuous 18-month relationship during the filming of the project, definitely not a couple we had on our bingo card. Although not the technical beginning of the Will Smith Nia Long iceberg, one could argue the film was the catalyst of their working relationship. Most fans know Long played Will's girlfriend Lisa Wilkes on The Fresh Prince, but even we didn't know she was recast until putting this ranking together. She initially appeared in season 2, episode 8 as Claudia, roughly a year and a half before the film's release. Fast forward to the box office success that Will and Long shared in the film, and Nia's stint would get its second wind as the girlfriend we all knew and loved. If we didn't know any better, we'd say The Fresh Prince had a thing for recasting people. Number 5, 6 Degrees of Separation. Now we know Will as one of the biggest stars in the box office has ever seen, but even in '93 he still had notable highlights as a rapper, winning the first Grammy for Best Rap Performance and television presence for The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. Still, it took his third time out before we would see a breakout performance from the Philly native. If we had to sum up the film in 3 words, gay Great Gatsby. Yes, the writers made it a point of emphasis to show that Will's character Paul was gay, but don't mistake that for an opportunity to expand on his love life or dynamic nature. We can't tell if that detail was meant to prevent Fitzgerald's estate from taking legal action or to placate the perceived romantic tension between Will and lead actress Stockard Channing. Channing would secure a nomination for Best Actress in a leading role, by the way. Her performance certainly wasn't bad, but when watching Will on screen, we were convinced that this was his calling, not hip-hop. The film plays out almost like a game of telephone, which felt refreshing and methodical. But even after sitting through a nearly 2-hour runtime, I'd be lying if I said I understood the film's purpose. Fun fact, aside from the well-known names like Will Smith, Donald Sutherland, and Ian McKellen, keen-eyed viewers can spot a young J.J. Abrams in the role of Doug. Yes, the same Abrams who would become one of the biggest producers in Hollywood. With this being Smith and Abrams' only real overlap, it feels like more than 6 degrees separating the two stars. Number 4, Men in Black. One of the more enjoyable watches in his body of work, Men in Black found the perfect way to combine ingenuity and recognition. Creative in the sense that it carved out its own lane in a genre that's beyond oversaturated. But the foresight to pair two oddballs like Smith and Jones together, well, that spawned a billion-dollar franchise with 4 installments to date. Part of the reason it finds itself at number 4 and not number 3 is that we find Will's chemistry with his other co-star to be a little more fitting. But a small part of us also feels resentful. After all, Watching Wild Wild West, it's hard not to see the film as an unofficial sequel. Definitely worth noting, the film ranked in nearly $600 million at the global box office, making it one of the 10 biggest films of the decade. As a standalone feat, that would be nothing short of impressive, but he had an even bigger film released a year prior. We're talking 365 days exactly. This man was doing Aubrey Graham numbers before streaming was even a thing. Number 3, Bad Boys. In keeping with our actor/rapper comparisons, with Will Smith and Drake's careers lining up so flawlessly, this has to be the What a Time to Be Alive of his filmography. In 2015, Drake was coming off an explosive feature run and one of the best projects of the decade with If You're Reading This, while Future cemented a legendary mixtape run of his own followed by DS2. Rewind 20 years earlier and Smith and Martin found themselves in similar positions. Both have successful stints in television with The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air and Martin respectively. We think the only noticeable differences would be in Martin Lawrence's being billed over Smith, whereas Drake had more motion than Future. We understand though, Lawrence was a little more battle-tested when it came to films, appearing in projects like Do the Right Thing, House Party, and Boomerang. Working with a budget of just under $20 million, this would be groundbreaking work for Smith, Lawrence, and new director Michael Bay. As we mentioned earlier, the way Will and Martin played off each other was iconic, a duo so potent that we'll be seeing the 4th installment hitting theaters almost 30 years after the first film. But as is a problem with all of Michael Bay films, the film loses a lot of steam outside of its natural habitat, movie theaters in July. We get explosions, car chases, and shootouts, but not a lick of character development or emotion. With this being their first run as a trio, they're still in CT's allotted grace period. Still, these top 2, they're in a league of their own. Number 2, Independence Day. In a career spanning more than 4 decades where Smith unofficially became Mr. Summer Blockbuster, this is his second highest grossing film. The only other film to surpass it has the Disney brand behind it. Grossing over $800 million at the time, Independence Day wasn't just the biggest film of '96. It was the second biggest film of all time, trailing only Jurassic Park, also starring Jeff Goldblum. On a side note, if you look at that same list now, Jurassic Park is 45th out of 50, while Independence Day doesn't even crack the list. Just a reminder of how massive an undertaking each and every film is. Will Smith is the top billed actor in this film, and he doesn't even appear on screen until 20 minutes in. I guess a 2.5-hour runtime will give you some extra breathing room. Credited as being at the forefront of the large-scale disaster movie genre, you can thank director Roland Emmerich for the trope of destroying New York City in every big-budget apocalyptic project. The same way Michael Bay became synonymous with explosions and car chases, Roland became intertwined with end-of-the-world flicks. He would go on to direct films like The Day After Tomorrow and 2012. There aren't a lot of critiques to level at the film. Despite it being a blockbuster, we feel the script was pretty solid. The acting might have left a bit to be desired, but the casting was on point as well. If there was a complaint we had for the film, it would be the unnecessary appeal to drama, having Vivica's character playing an exotic dancer. Again, it doesn't really factor into the story at all, except that it was the sole obstacle standing in the way of Will proposing before the events of the movie take place. Also, they had her clocking in for work at the club after the aliens pulled up.
Come on, man. What are we talking about?
Number 1, Enemy of the State. Getting returns of $250 million on a $90 million budget, this isn't Will's biggest film, but it's by far his most balanced. Writing, acting, casting, it's unequivocally Will at his sharpest. The secondhand sense of paranoia we feel while watching the government track Will speaks volumes to looming fears of Big Brother surveillance at the turn of the century. The film spoke to public fears of diminishing privacy so well that the NSA went on a PR run for the ages. Following the 9/11 attacks, the passing of the Patriot Act, and Edward Snowden's whistleblowing, this film is said to have been decades ahead of its time. Kind of like Larry Riley drafting Stephen Clay before the Pace and Space era. I can't tell if we're sticking to Drake comparisons or basketball metaphors anymore, but the point still remains. Enemy of the State was phenomenal from start to finish. We get a little bit of every emotion out of Will. We get to root for Gene Hackman for once, and we even get love interest in the form of Regina King and Lisa Bonet. In a world where governments constantly find themselves at war and citizens constantly protest said wars, Enemy of the State not only draws attention to over-surveillance, but a general distrust and authority figures overall. Unfortunately, that's timeless material. Hey, that's another one in the books. No, we won't be tapping your phones, but we will know if you hit that like button or not. Let us know what your favorite Will Smith role is from the 90s, and stay tapped in for Will Smith's 2000 movie ranking coming soon. It's your man CJ Williams for Culturalist Theory. I'm out.